Welcome to Tales from the Fandom, a podcast that brings a special guest out of the multiverse and straight to you. And now your host, David Ginsburg.
Welcome to a special edition of Tales from the Fandom. I am pleased to bring back one of my original guests in the first 10 episodes, Barbie of Cosplay by Barbie Wi, or you might have known her as Asgard Barbie before she changed. And we are here to discuss a favorite fandom of both of ours, which is celebrating, shockingly, its 20th anniversary on this day when this podcast is released, and that is the Joss Whedon show, Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Please welcome back to the podcast, Barbie. How are you doing?
Hey, everybody. And hey, David, thanks so much for having me back. I'm great, and I'm super excited about this episode.
Now, can you believe, I was looking up anniversaries for podcast episodes for the year, and I knew that this year Star Wars was celebrating its 40th, and I was like, well, let me look up a few other ones that are really those really seminal fandoms, like Harry Potter is also celebrating its 20th anniversary this year. I was like,
really?
Really, 20th anniversary for when it was published in the United Kingdom.
That's impressive.
So I said, well, Buffy's been around a while. I remember when it came out, and I was working at Blockbuster. I looked it up, and hot dog, it was 20 years today.
That's awesome. Happy birthday, Buffy.
20 years ago. So
that makes me feel really old.
I know. And here I was working, let's see here, I was in community college at the time, working at Blockbuster, and I remember one of my coworkers had said, I was a big Star Trek and Star Wars, nerd, and was really into, all the sci-fi and fantasy type stuff, and she said, you really like this TV show that's on, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and we had, I think it was after the first season had aired, they had put out, 2 or 3 VHS tapes that had 3 episodes on it each. It wasn't the whole season.
Yes,
but it was
I
enough.
Remember these.
It was enough
I
to
actually owned this. I had the VHS sets before the DVDs existed.
Yeah, it was enough to get you interested and be like, hey, that show seems pretty cool. And so I rented them, and from that moment on, I was hooked, and I got into the second season. I probably got into it somewhere mid second season by that time.
See, I got into it at the very beginning because I was a fan of the movie first. That was 92 with Christy Swanson and Luke Perry. And I loved it. I mean, it was so camp. Disclaimer, a lady never tells her age, but I was really young. I don't think Buffy is overtly adult, so I don't think there's anything wrong with me having watched it. But it's definitely not my usual fare. I was also obsessed with Labyrinth around that time. David Bowie was my first celebrity crush, true story. So I watched weird things, but I watched that VHS of the movie, so many times. And so when the series was announced, it was no question. It was and I'd never followed a show before. I was that young. I'd never really had a fandom. I didn't know it at the time, but that was what geekdom was. That was my gateway drug.
Right. My first one was Star Trek, Star Wars, and Lord of the Rings. And, back in those times, there was only, Star Trek conventions or comic book conventions.
Yeah.
And
I didn't appreciate Star Trek until much later, but that's the other love of my life. but I really had to grow into that. I was with Buffy from the start.
And that's pretty amazing because, I mean, at this point now, people find it on Netflix all the time or reference to it. But back then, I mean, for finding a show that wasn't on a main network, that was targeted the way it was, written the way it was, I mean...
What was it, WGN at first? I know it skipped. I know it changed
around
season 5.
I think it was WB, and then UPN picked it up.
That's it. Okay. Actually, I was so young. Originally, when it moved spots, it moved to a later spot when it made the network change. Mm-hmm. My bedtime was actually extended so that I could keep watching it.
Oh, well, that's very nice of your parents.
Right? My mother has always been supportive.
Well, that's good. So, you are, because I remember watching the videotape of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and I didn't, the movie was good, but it wasn't what it became.
It was a different animal, yeah.
Right. And I know Joss has said, I think that he wrote the movie, but it got changed at some point, or parts of it got changed, and then they had, this huge tie-in comic at some point that explained how the Buffy movie relates to the actual TV show and how,
I can see that. That's awesome. I've kept up with, the Dark Horse comics.
Right. If I find that comic, I'll send it to you.
Yeah, link me. I'd be really interested.
Because it's got, this whole backstory. Buffy's telling, Xander and Willow about her time at the school and everything and the first Watcher and and it just ties it in how you would feel like it'd be tied in the TV show.
One of my favorite cosplays, actually, was I did a Hemery High cheerleading uniform from the movie. Mm-hmm. I was in love with it. I could have worn it everywhere. And, you have, when you wear something like that and somebody recognizes it, because it's pretty obscure these days anyway, yeah. It's not the recognizable Buffy that we know. It was just my people, you know what I'm doing.
Exactly.
It was very cool. And I think, that's part of the allure of cosplay anyway. It was just extra special because it was Buffy.
So, I have to ask, we talk about it all the time, but who is your favorite character from the TV series?
How long do we have?
We've got as long as you want. I'll clear the way for this to be the only episode released in a month for, that 1 month period if I need to.
I could do that. It's, when I tell you I honestly would have called it an obsession. I don't know how my mother dealt with this because it was not normal. I would watch the show. I bought the books, the novels. I had the Watcher's Guide, volumes 1 and 2. I had the Monster book. The thing is, I was a Quiz Bowl kid as well, so that's how my mind worked. Mm-hmm. Facts were really attractive to me, I guess, at that age. Even through college, I went to the Nationals. True story.
Wow.
And I think that's where it started, was Buffy, because I just could not get enough of the verse. I needed to know how things were built and, backstories, and it was all there. It was incredible, and I think that was how I got so sucked in. I would have to say my favorite character of all time... No, I can't say that either. I can give you top 3. How about that?
Okay, yeah, you can qualify it. That's fine.
Okay. Obviously, Giles.
Okay.
Who doesn't love Giles? Especially when he picked up his guitar, you were like, "Oh my God, you're more than a librarian." That was a big moment for me. Yeah. Big fan. Jenny Calendar gets overlooked a lot. I loved her. I thought she was so complex. I thought it was such a shame that her arc got cut short. Mm-hmm. I also think that was one of the most beautiful episodes they made, Passion. I guess that was season 2.
Season 2, yep.
Yeah, that with that voiceover at the beginning, Passion, it rules us all. Oh, I still get goosebumps. It's just such a realized piece of television. It was incredible. And then, of course, Tara.
Ah, Tara.
No, Tara owns everybody's heart, and I am no different. I actually met her a year-ish ago. Ran into her at Challengers, of all places. That's a comic shop here.
Okay.
Yeah, and I have a picture on my Instagram. It was just like me looking like a deer in the headlights. But it was so cool. She writes books now, so I picked up one of her books. It was like a really weird like confrontation with the geekdom of my youth.
Oh man. So yeah, you picked some good characters. Giles and Jenny Calendar, and that was going to be another question, is definitely one of those overlooked characters, and I think it's just because she was there. She is so influential, but just for a short time.
Yeah, she was there to serve a purpose, obviously. She was, like, literally a plot point with legs. But I don't know what it was about her. Maybe because I just wanted to see Giles happy. Oh, Olivia. That's another one. The girlfriend from the later seasons. Also, you just bring her out for, like, I think she was in maybe 5 or 6 episodes.
Mm-hmm.
She was so complex and sure of herself, and I think that's why I loved her so much. She didn't hang on things like the other relationships. It was a very different relationship model as opposed to the rest of the series, and I was really disappointed we never got her story.
There are characters where we watch these shows and you get those characters and then that's it.
Yeah,
and it's like, give me more.
It happens quite a bit with Buffy.
It does. And I think it's just because there were so many characters that cycled through. And that's one of the things that I liked when they eventually did branch out to Angel. And even in with some of the characters showing up over there, like Harmony,
right,
got to develop more. Or Harmony was brought back in, like, the later seasons of Buffy to develop before she even moved over there.
She's so funny.
So it's nice that we get these characters, and then it's just, you get them, they're done so well that you just want them to come back.
Yeah, and that's what I mean when I say I could talk forever, because not everybody got their day, like Olivia, like, other characters. It's just like, I could watch a show about this. They just had so much material to work with. Gosh. I almost wish it could be revisited, but, it would never be the same.
It's true, and I know that there was even talk of them doing a new Buffy movie. That there had been talk of a Buffy movie at some point a couple of years ago, but it wasn't involving Joss.
Huh.
And I think Joss had come out and said, I don't own Buffy. Like, whoever owns Buffy owns it, and they can do what they want with it.
Yeah.
And I think there was so much fan backlash or fan outcry, like if Joss isn't involved with it, we don't want it, that at least at this point there's nothing going on, or nothing I've heard from it. I mean, of course the same could be said with certain, like, other properties like Power Rangers, where Power Rangers have been in the TV show for so long, you don't expect them to make a feature film, and here we are with a feature film right around the corner. So it's always interesting. But yes, the Buffy lives on through the Dark Horse comics. I believe they're on season 11 now, either 11 or 12.
Yeah, it's up there. I have a bad comics backlog right now because I'm moving, and, like, I've got so many things stealing my my attention. I'm behind on almost everything.
I've read up to, I think, the last season, and whatever started coming out now, because I think they're on issue 3 of whatever season they're on. I haven't seen any of those yet, but it's definitely a departure from the TV show. But it's nice that we still can revisit those characters if we want to.
And it's nice that, other people get it, that they've hung on to that for this long. I mean, the writers, obviously, and the producers think there's monetary value in it because it's so beloved that it's still going on. I think that's very cool in and of itself. It
is. Now, do you have a favorite season? Because everyone has a favorite season. Usually it's not
Lord.
season 1.
No,
or season 4.
And it's not season 4. It's certainly not season 6. I can never choose between 2 or 3.
Both really good seasons.
Yeah, I mean, that's classic Buffyana. Like, it's before things got super heavy. It's when, back during Faith's heyday, it's very classic.
Mm-hmm. And they have stuff, and that was always the thing with Buffy, is you get these episodes, and they could be almost standalone episodes, except they start referencing things in later episodes that start tying everything together, like into these grand arcs that last, 2 or 3 seasons. So something that a passing comment, a reference that was made in one episode comes back another season later, and you're like, whoa, like they tied that in, and it's like that was always the incredible thing to see, because you have these shows where it's like the Monster of the Week show.
Yeah.
And admittedly, like the first season of Buffy was kind of similar, Monster of the Week, something's going on. But when they got picked up for season 2 and season 3, they started having all of these stuff like just tie back into it. And it just sets that foundation for like how incredible the series was as a whole. But you get these incredible seasons, like season 2 and season 3 are probably like the standout seasons for Buffy.
Yeah.
Because season 2 you have Buffy and Angel.
Yes.
And then season 3 is the whole mayor thing that the storyline started back in season 1 with just random conversations about the mayor. Like, the mayor's not going to like this, or the mayor has said to do this. And you're like, they're really talking about the mayor a lot, but, you never really...
episode that was Graduation. Oh my gosh. With the whole fight against the mayor as he ascends, and gosh, that's still so just iconic.
It is. And, and then they tie stuff from that episode into later episodes. I mean, that's where Harmony became a vampire. That's where, the hellmouth that the school sits on is, like, referenced repeatedly. And then they even rebuild it at one point, and Buffy goes back to school.
I would have loved to see probably just a storyboard, but I'm sure it was enormous of, threads across episodes, across seasons. They had to keep track of it somehow. I would have loved to be a fly on that wall.
It would have been interesting. Like, just having the, like, if someone had taken a picture of, like, whatever they use, like a bulletin board, and, like, if there's been strings tied to each thing, almost akin to, like, people, how they used to track Lost and all the Lost details and storylines and stuff like that. And just to see Buffy, like, okay, we're going to make a reference here, and it's going to be referencing, like, I believe, like, Buffy and Faith. Buffy was, like, in Faith's memory, and Faith was talking about, we're counting down, and it was, like, a reference to Dawn showing up.
Yes. Oh, my gosh. The forward references, I think, are the most impressive of any TV show, but Buffy did those especially well.
Especially well, definitely. And it's always fun. Like, even now, you can go back and rewatch the show and just pick up on those things that you might have missed. And we're lucky to live in the age where Buffy is on Netflix until, they take it off at some point.
Until it's not.
Until it's gone, but then at least, the DVDs are out there and it's more accessible than it used to be.
Yes.
I remember at one point... whatever channel Buffy was on, I believe it was UPN at the time, we didn't get in our city, so I used to have to pay people in another city to record it on videotape and mail me the videotape.
Oh my gosh.
Like, that was how dedicated I was.
Yeah, I was the same way. I remember, I forget what episode. No, it was Amends with the snowstorm. We had a hurricane where I was, and obviously the cable was all out, and when we did get it, it was news covering blah, 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 and so I missed it. And in that day and age, like, what do? You just pray that they rerun it at some point during the week, and that you're available to watch it.
And that never happened.
No.
Not especially for our, like, those kind of shows. They didn't rerun stuff.
I didn't see that episode for so long. Luckily, I was in school at the time, and this was before geekdom was cool. So it was not cool to be a Buffy fan, but I did have one teacher, actually, who watched it as closely as I did. And so I was like, can you tell me anything about the episode? But, of course, her television had been out, too, so
right.
It was so sad.
I mean, I used to record it just in case I missed it, on videotape, mind you.
Yes.
And set it like 10 minutes before it started, 10 minutes after it ended, just to make sure. But then I used to tell people, don't call me. On Tuesday nights, don't call between the hours of whatever it was, like 7 to 8 or 8 to 9, whatever Buffy was at. I said, I'm not going to answer.
Yeah.
I'm watching Buffy.
People. Yeah. My Tuesday nights belonged to Buffy. I would record it, and then I would rewatch it. And like I said, I was very into Quiz Bowl, and like I belonged to a fan site. I think it was like an Easy Boards, Pro Boards sort of setup. It was definitely like a message board. And part of it would be, quizzes on the episodes. It was, and I used to write them because I was a huge nerd. Still am, I guess. But yeah, that was kind of my jam, to see other people who could ace these quizzes, and like, man, I was such a baby geek.
But it's all good. I mean, now you're surrounded by people who have been influenced by Buffy, over these years that it's been out, and it's one of those shows where if Buffy hadn't been as popular as it was, or as uniting of a fandom as it was, I don't think some of the shows that we have now would be anywhere close.
That's true. It was really groundbreaking in a lot of ways. And especially now, I think it means something different than it did when it was on TV, especially to, people who are kind of outliers. There's feminist merit to it. Whedon feminism is kind of like a beast all in its own. It's very specific, but for the time, it was really groundbreaking. For me, it was Cordelia, like, who was allowed to be that confident at that point in time. It was not cool to have that kind of confidence, but it was for her. And that was a new concept. And I think in that way, it's aged pretty well. People still recognize that it was really important for a lot of people in that way.
Absolutely, especially, and I know Joss had said it at some point, and you are definitely right, like, Whedon and feminism is like an interesting beast.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, he's got the positive notes, and then there's, like, definitely some negative notes on the flip side. But at the time, and I think he had said it in an interview, like, to have a main character be a strong female character who is, like, slaying vampires and demons, and her name is Buffy, I mean, it really took that stereotype that you have, like, blonde hair, cheerleader type, like, and just threw it all away.
Right. And which was novel at the time.
Right. Go ahead.
I think we have other things because we have Buffy, like, hands down. So I feel like in that way I'm really grateful for it existing.
Absolutely. And then you get the other characters. You get, like, the next, I mean, if you'd call the Scoobies, like, co-stars, I mean, you have Willow, who turns from... Who might
have been my other favorite.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I have one of my children is, I mean, I have 3 kids. 2 of them are named after Buffy characters. One of them is Willow.
That's awesome. That is, I was so obsessed with Buffy. Everybody knew it at my school at the time. So even my best friend got a nickname, and they would call her Willow. Because I was so obsessed.
Right. And yeah, so I've got a Willow, I've got a Xander.
Oh my gosh.
So, and my wife always tries to play it off now, like, oh no, they weren't influenced by Buffy, because she hasn't watched all of it, but I made her watch enough, and I was like, how about these names? And she like, agreed to them and everything.
That's awesome.
But yeah, I mean, you have characters like Willow, who nerd to the core, super smart, evolves into, like, being one of the strongest characters in the Buffyverse.
She was so dynamic. Her story, I think, is infinitely the most interesting.
Why do you say that?
Because she went from point A to point, XYZ, wherever she, with all the stops in between. Mm-hmm. They're miles apart. Yes, Buffy died twice, came back, blah, blah, blah. We know this. But she's still kind of where she started. She just embraced a lot of things. Willow she might as well be a different character. And that was really important to see as well, that your priorities can change as a woman, as a person in a relationship, as someone embracing a new religion, as someone who doesn't agree with their parents. I think Willow, her issues were more important to me at that time, because obviously it's really hard to identify with being a vampire slayer. So I feel like Willow was a lot more accessible.
She was. I mean, the characters I always tend to gravitate to are the sidekicks or those background characters, and for me it was always Xander and Willow. Like, seeing their dynamic, seeing them as initially as just the normal people helping this, person who has powers succeed and save the day and do everything. And you get those standalone episodes like Xander has with the Zeppo, where it's like, here's non-powered Xander, like, in all these crazy situations, and yet he saves the day from, like, the school not being blown up and all this other stuff going on. And he's like the guy that gets the donuts. Willow goes from, geek hacker hacking into systems to, like, supreme witch extraordinaire. All the while, like, dealing with her feelings for Xander, which are usually unrequited until one point. Then Oz, and then, realizing that she's into girls, so then Tara. And then Kennedy, which no one likes Kennedy, as far as I'm aware.
I was just about to say that. Nobody likes Kennedy.
Nobody. Even in the comics when they write it, no one likes Kennedy.
That's so funny.
But yeah, she has definitely, and I think the only other character that I think comes close to her as far as a storyline arc, which this character took 2 shows to go across, but was Wesley, from Watcher to what he became on Angel.
I think Wesley was so precious. And it was really interesting to watch him go. I was less invested in Wesley for sure. But I loved kind of the tension he threw in between Giles and Buffy at the beginning. And then that little, like, side fling with Cordelia. And he was always so much fun.
Yeah, definitely. And, there you go again. You have these characters where Wesley showed up, mid to late season 2, and stayed for season 3. But he has, like, that impact. Like, you see the way the Watchers work with Giles. And then here comes Junior Watcher, Wesley. And you see, like, what they're really sticking to and the way that they act. And even if you don't have the Watchers Council show up, like, there's Wesley, like, trying to lay down the law.
Yeah, and I did appreciate that. I think the Watchers Council only popped up, like, 2 or 3 times in person. But I appreciated that. I think his name was Quentin Travers.
Yes.
Yeah, and it was very linear. They would always bring him back. He was always, referencing, they clearly had policy that he had to stick to. That was one of those, like, really rare characters that was done really well. Like, you could believe there was a whole council, and that man lived for those rules.
Exactly.
Yeah. I didn't like him, but he was
even Giles. Giles stuck to those rules strongly in that first season, and even into the second season.
Yeah.
And then, Giles started breaking away and eventually got kicked out of being a Watcher, and then he got reinstated as a Watcher, and then they blew up the Watchers Council, and there you go. No more Watchers.
Yay. Giles was inimitable. He's just perfect. Like, he was cast really well. Anthony Stewart Head was just, can you imagine anybody else? No, because he's perfect. It was
absolutely.
He was so human. I can't put my finger on it. It was more than, I guess, words on a page, which is sometimes how Buffy could come off, I guess, because she was so far removed from reality. But Giles, like, as that parental sort of presence, I guess, more than just a Watcher. He was just really genuine. I think that's why he's endured as one of my favorites.
One of the things that is always referenced on Buffy, or referenced when people talk about Buffy, is the relationships. And I'm not talking friendships, but there's always people that side with different, relationships, different characters. Whose relationship did you love the best?
Obviously, Tara and Willow, obviously.
Okay.
Hands down, like, the best. I lost it when Tara died. That was so hard for me. Oh my gosh. Let's see. Where I like to start is Buffy, because she had so many, and they are very polarizing. In the fandom, you are rabidly Team Angel or Team Spike or whoever. I think we can all agree that nobody likes Riley. So he's not really an option, even though he's canonically there.
Right.
Right. The thing is, I'm not really Team anyone. I thought Buffy and Angel was iconic, sure. And it was novel, I guess. I'd never seen a concept, where Angel could lose his soul based on his happiness, blah, blah. It was a really great setup. It was a very tragic setup. And in that way, it was great. I didn't like her and Spike. I thought that relationship swung to really unhealthy places. I was actually pretty surprised that it went on as long as it did. Her and Xander, I guess, is also an option. And I'm like you, I root for the underdogs. I'm like, yeah, Data, a sidekick, a non-powered sidekick, that's cool. But it also kind of didn't fit. I feel like Buffy is Buffy. Like, to put her in a lasting relationship kind of dims what she is.
I always wanted Buffy and Xander to end up together. I thought that they worked, and on some level they do. And you kind of see it like in season 7 where like she's living at the house and Xander's over fixing things all the time, and like they have that like it's almost like a parental relationship.
Yeah. I think it could have been very to steal another Whedon, Hawkeye from Avengers Age of Ultron, when he comes home, and has a completely normal family outside of his superheroing. That's so Whedon, for one. But you're right. It very well could have gone that way.
But yeah, they set it up, and I think when I think about it, I was thinking about just now how the first Slayer was always like, oh, the Slayer's alone. You need to be like, all Slayers are alone. This is the first time a Slayer's really had friends or family that are around them. And, maybe for Buffy, she'll just have to be alone. Like, that's her relationship. She'll be alone, but at least she'll be surrounded by people that she loves. Right.
Speaking of family, though, oh my God, how gutted were you when Joyce died?
Oh my gosh. I remember that episode, and I remember, that they had made the choice to really not do like music. There's no music in that episode. It's just, and at that time there was the fostering of the internet. Like, the internet was around, but it wasn't as pervasive as it is now with, oh, look at the spoilers.
Right.
Oh, look at the scripts for the next few episodes. And that was shocking. I mean, that was an episode where you did not expect that to happen at all.
Yeah.
At all.
And then the episode where Dawn tries to bring her back, and you see her pass by the window and knock on the door, and Dawn, says, "Mommy," and then, breaks whatever, so that when the door opens, no, I guess it was Buffy who looked toward the door and opened it, and Dawn kills the spell before she can get there. Oh my God. What a choice. That was, it just like ripped my heart out all over again. I loved Joyce.
She is such a great character. Like, and she had amazing relationships with characters that you wouldn't even imagine, like Angel and Spike. And they have these relationships, and you're like, how is she doing that? But at the same time, like, it's totally believable.
Yeah, it was very much in the realm of Buffy's mom. You're right. It was not unbelievable. It was, oh my gosh. Oh, and then, what was it? Band Candy? Is that episode 5 or something?
With her and Giles.
Yeah. Joyce was, man, it was really a loss when we didn't have Joyce anymore.
It was. I mean, that's when Buffy really had to grow up at that point and manage things and have to deal with things. And I remember, like, you know, we talk about Joyce dying, and then, like, my mind immediately goes to having Buffy working at the Double Meat Palace.
Yeah, I was
like, she's got to pay bills, and she's got to be responsible, and you know, she's got to maintain the house and everything that she obviously breaks. Like, Xander can't just get comp wood and stuff. Like, they got to have money to do all this stuff, and now she's got to work. Yeah,
and it was a lot of, I guess, shows kind of ignore the reality component. Like, it's just really easy to overlook that, and it was kind of new that Joss decided to go there.
What, you mean that teenagers on TV shows actually have parents?
Right.
Or
work.
Or you know, like, how, like, you're looking at their clothing. How are you affording all that clothing? Right. Joyce is not bringing home the money from working at the, what was it, the museum or the gallery.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, she's not pocketing big bucks for you to wear, like, designer clothes and stuff. And that's, you know, that's the other thing about Buffy is, like, their clothing choices seemed believable.
Yeah.
And you even had
that weird time period.
that weird late 90s, early 2000s time period. And you even had Cordelia go through, like, how her dad, I think it was her dad, lost his job. And she had to get a job to work to afford what she used to just, you know, be given, basically.
Yeah.
It's such, man, talking about Buffy.
Yeah, it was groundbreaking in just so many ways. Yes, it was just a show, but man, when you grew up with it, like, this was my Harry Potter. I mean, I grew up with Harry Potter too. I'm not that old, but, like, Harry Potter was definitely a part of my life, but this was the OG geekdom. Man, and I think it echoed for anybody who was watching it. You could find a piece of you there.
Oh, yeah.
It was so wide.
It's just incredible. Like, just thinking about it, like, everything pops back into, like, place. And I remember, you know, let's just say, like, the musical episode that they threw out, that there's going to be a musical episode. And you're like, what in the world are they thinking that there's going to be a musical episode?
Musicals, yeah.
Right. And now every show has a musical episode.
Yeah.
Like, we are coming up on
The Flash.
Supergirl and The Flash to have a musical crossover episode.
Yeah.
Or, we get these other shows where it's like, it wouldn't have happened if Buffy hadn't have done it, and it wasn't as well received, I think.
I wonder. And I'm going to Google really quick. Xena had a musical episode. It was nowhere near as good as the Buffy musical episode, but I wonder which came first.
Which came first, Buffy or Xena? Two feminist icons battle it out.
Let's see. The Xena was called The Bittersweet. It was made in 1998.
Okay, so that means that Xena came first.
Oh my gosh! I know they were. I know Joss was influenced by Xena. He's mentioned it before. It was a very different. It wasn't like a stage musical like Buffy very much was. People would, you know, lapse into song and dance, and it was very staged. Xena was kind of, you know, an actual plot, but with music. And it wasn't like the catchiest of music either. It's not something you can sing like the Buffy musical. I think that is such a strong soundtrack. I still play it.
Oh, yeah. I used to have it memorized. I would have it in the car, and that would be, like, the thing I'd listen to, or I'd listen to, like, the same songs over and over again.
Yeah.
I mean, and that was before they even had, like, the CD come out. Like, Pete, you would find those tracks, somebody would just cut them off the episode and throw them up there.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's what you had until they released that CD.
Yeah, exactly.
do you have... Okay, so I know you talked about Passions.
Yes.
As one of your favorite episodes. Is that your number one favorite episode, or is it too hard to pick one?
It's way too hard. Like, I could narrow it down if we were talking, like, inside of a season. Obviously, I have favorites.
Mm-hmm.
But overall, God, Passion is really good. It was just so well made. It's definitely in, like, the top 5, for sure. But it's so hard to pick because Passion era Buffy is such a different show than, like, season 5, season 6, season 7, that sort of thing. I actually really loved the evolution of Dawn as a concept, not so much as a character. But I really loved where she put everyone. And so I really loved the episodes with Glory.
Okay.
I love that, like, the Scoobies had changed so much because we eventually lost Joyce. We had Dawn all of a sudden. Anya was there by that point, kind of being integrated into the group. So those episodes they're just very different than, say, like, back with Faith or even Kendra. I loved Kendra. It's just too hard.
Just too hard. Well, let's jump over to who is your favorite villain.
Ooh.
Because every season they always talk about there's always a big bad. And of course there's, like, the little bads in between, like the trio, nerd trio. Like they set it up like, oh, you think they're the big bads, but they're really not.
But I think they were a lot more insidious than... I love talking about the trio because as far as, like, toxic attitudes towards women, towards normalization of violence, I think that was the only time, or at least the first time, that they used a gun on the show was the episode when Tara died. And that was thanks to the trio, and it's just, like, they're so normal evil, not, like, supernatural evil. Yeah. And I think a lot of people overlook that in the grand scheme of things. My favorite villain, I know my least favorite villain, Adam and Maggie Walsh. I was not a fan of the initiative. I thought it was honestly pretty boring. And it was just so very on the nose. It was obviously commentary, and it was like, we get it.
Right. And I know part of that is that Maggie Walsh, or the actress, left Buffy at a certain point because I don't think she wanted to do it anymore. That there was the whole storyline changed at a certain point because she, and I guess doing the TV series or doing Buffy in particular, wasn't what I guess she had thought she was signing up for. And so I know that they had to rejigger, like, the whole, like, back end of that season and make Adam the bad guy, and, like, then do all the stuff that they were doing with Riley and Adam and all that.
Right. But I think that was Lindsay Krause who played Maggie.
That name sounds familiar.
Yeah, like I said, Quiz Bowl, like, and the name cards at the beginning of every episode were so helpful. Gosh, and that theme still brings back memories. Gosh, it's just so iconic. I really loved the judge. What was that? Season 1, season 2?
Season 2.
Yeah, the big
blue guy.
Yeah.
I cannot be killed by any weapon forged from man, I believe.
And she shoulders a rocket launcher.
Yep.
Oh, no. Okay, I take it back. Drusilla. Drusilla was my absolute favorite. There was something about her. I adored her. You know,
you get those vampire characters, and they're all pretty amazing. I mean, you have Darla, who, I mean, built in season 1, she's killed off within the first few episodes, but it's like Darla gets to become this amazing character through Angel's backstory.
Yeah.
And the same with Drusilla. Like, and looking at Drusilla before you even learn, like, what happened to her and who did it, I mean, you're like, that's a messed up vampire. And then you're like, Angel did that to her.
Yeah.
I mean, and then Drusilla picks up Spike, and that's, you know, Spike and Drusilla, and, like, they're 4 dynamic characters right there.
Yeah.
They all straddle the spectrum, except for Drusilla, because Drusilla never has to deal with, like, Darla has a baby and has to feel that soul.
Yeah.
Spike becomes, like, a souled vampire, kind of, I guess.
Yeah,
and the chip.
That was one of my favorite storylines.
Yeah, I mean, Drusilla is an amazing character. Between her vampirism plus, like, the way that she can kind of see the future.
Yeah, I really wish we would have seen more of her. But I also just loved seeing her effect on Spike, you know. Every time he rolls into town and runs over the Welcome to Sunnydale sign, you know it's going to be good.
Yes, such an iconic, like, scene right there.
Right?
Like, oh, crap, Spike's back.
Yeah, exactly. That poor sign. Yeah, they were, gosh, I don't think there's anybody no villains as iconic as Drew.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, even you can put her up against, like, Glory. You could put her up against, the first Evil is what it was.
Yeah.
But, she is up there. Drusilla is one of those characters where if she had ever reached, like, full power as a villain or had her own season, she would have been amazing.
Yeah.
Just to see what she could have done.
I really wish we'd gotten more of her. I think she was one of the strongest characters, and it's a shame.
It is. It is indeed. Now, let's see here. We've talked about our characters. We've talked about the episodes. We've talked about bad guys. If you were in Buffy the Vampire Slayer, if you were a character in there, like, what would you envision yourself? I mean, there's people there like, oh, I'd want to be a Slayer or
I definitely would want to be a Slayer. No, I actually, like, when I was starting to get into theater and stage makeup, my very first projects were vampire prosthetics, and they were kind of terrible at the time, obviously, because I didn't know what I was doing. I was, like I said, really young, but that's always what I wanted to do for Halloween. I guess I went as Buffy a few times because it's kind of a lazy costume. You carry a stake, and people either know or they don't. And those red leather pants, yeah, that's very Buffy.
Yep.
But if I could be anything, it would be a vampire. I don't care if it's a vampire who gets dusted in the first, in the intro. That's cool. I would have wanted to be a vampire.
That would have been cool. And you would have had all the cool martial arts skills that all vampires had.
Right? You die, and then all of a sudden you're Jackie Chan. It's incredible.
Yep. Which I at least like that they make that self-referencing joke either in season 2 or season 3. The vampire gets up and I guess he gets away, and they're like, wow, how did he get that way? And they're like, oh, he's a gymnast or something.
Yeah, sometimes I think about what Buffy would have been if it had been made in the era of like The Office or Parks and Rec, where it's very like broken fourth wall. How great would that be?
That would be hilarious. Like, I could just imagine, like, a gym character talking to the camera about, like, well, it just happened. I mean,
Giles
what are we going to do?
Look straight into the camera and sigh just a lot.
Yeah, he would almost be like Dwight.
Yeah,
I imagine, like just a very subdued Dwight. Like, yep, it happened.
Or they'd be trying to puzzle something out, and they'd say something that he said literally 10 minutes, and it would just cut to a shot of him drinking his tea, like completely over it. Gosh, Giles was too pure for this world. So good. Gosh.
Buffy's been around for 20 years, and we've clearly had spin-offs from it. We've had Angel. We've had the comic books, which, I mean, there's 2 long-running comic books. There's the Buffy, where they've started doing, like, the seasons, and then there's, like, a Faith and Angel comic that's been going on for a while. There was always the talk about Giles getting, like, a prequel-type show, like, on the BBC at some point.
Oh, my gosh.
Like,
if only.
like Ripper.
I would watch that so... Like, I would be glued to the screen. Gosh, his backstory with him and Ethan. Every time they allude to it, it was obviously, it was a driving plot point when Ethan Rain would come into town Halloween. Oh, my God, they're Halloween episodes. And that was the one that started it all. And that's where you get, the first hints of Giles' background. And yet, we don't really have the story.
Right.
It's just a gold mine. And they didn't do anything
so much
with it. Yeah.
There's so much. I remember after the show ended, there had been talk about, and it was after Angel had ended that, or maybe it's before, like Buffy, but Angel at the same time. There's talk about having a Faith the Vampire Slayer TV show.
Huh.
And then Eliza Dushku went on to do, I think it was like True Calling.
Oh, yeah. I think that was right after Dollhouse.
Like, things just never materialized for that spin-off. Like, there's always a spin-off talk for a long time. It's either, like, the Giles spin-off or the Faith spin-off.
I didn't talk of the Giles spin-off, and now my brain is just like, yes, please, give it to me. 20 years later,
yes.
It would still be
20
relevant.
years later.
Yeah.
It would be. They could even do something where Giles is reminiscing about the thing and have maybe a younger actor be him during his teenage years. There's so much out there, and I know that Joss has done so much more since Buffy the Vampire Slayer. I mean, he helmed all of the Marvel, the Avengers, the 2 Avengers movies, and he was like creatively in control of the universe for a while. And I remember him talking about how he was just tired.
Yeah, I think what happens when you work with something that big, you answer to a lot of people. You don't, your vision isn't as pure as it would be if you were the one in the driver's seat of a smaller vehicle like Buffy. And I think, that being what he was used to, I think it was probably hard for him. And I can see why. And I honestly think that he's better with smaller projects. I did not love Avengers Age of Ultron. I kind of honestly truly hated where he took Black Widow. She's Hawkeye's my favorite, but I mean, she's the lady there, and obviously she's an allegory for strong women everywhere, just being the literal strong woman on the team, and being so, I think, owning, I guess, of her specific background with the Red Room and her sexuality and weaponizing it. It's just, she's very important. And he kind of got his fingerprints all over her, and I hated it. But he kind of did the same thing with Buffy and with Cordelia, and it turned out really well. So, for the most part. So I think the difference is really like the size of the project and how many people he has to answer to and how distilled his vision gets in the process.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I really loved his, I know he has, Bellwether Studios, named after his estate. They did Much Ado About Nothing, and it was incredible. I saw it twice in theaters. I have it on Amazon Video now. It's so good. I mean, I'm a Shakespeare fan, so a lot of people wouldn't think that, but just like the art direction of it, even taking Shakespeare out of the equation, he's obviously very talented. But yeah, those bigger projects are kind of his kryptonite.
Yeah, I always wonder what he's going to do next, if he's ever going to go back to TV after everything that, Fox really did to him with Firefly.
Yeah.
And I mean, it'd be nice. I think I saw something come across my newsfeed a week or so ago, like that they were talking about doing like a limited reboot of Firefly, or like,
oh my god,
doing something in that setting. And I was like, I'll wait to hear something from Joss, because otherwise it's not anything to get excited about.
I don't know what he's doing currently. I haven't really heard anything about him since Ultron ended.
To the internet.
Yeah.
What is Joss Whedon doing? Well, besides being like having some mean stuff to say about politics, which we'll avoid that. What is Joss Whedon
more often? Is he still on Twitter? He quit at one point.
He still is on Twitter.
Okay.
He is. Let's see here. It looks like he is doing he announced a screenplay. This is the last thing on IMDb. So I'm not going to say it's official or anything, because IMDb lies.
Yes.
but it's called the Untitled Joss Whedon World War II Horror Project.
Oh no! That's right. He did Cabin in the Woods.
He did.
I hate horror. I get nightmares really easily. Actually, Buffy is right on the cusp of what I can stand. Some of it gave me nightmares. Hush. The Gentlemen were really hard for me because it was such an incredible episode. It was so powerful, but they haunted me. It was awful. I can't do horror. We even have to change the channel actually when horror movie commercials come up.
Yep, my wife is the same way.
Yeah, I'm just really sensitive to it. So it's hard that he had a movie. What was it? In Her Eyes, is that right?
I'll have to check. Let's see here.
It was really good. Anyway, it's on Netflix.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's the name of it.
Let's see here. Joss
In
Whedon.
Your Eyes. That's what it is.
Okay.
Yeah. Last I checked, it is on streaming Netflix. And it's very much a departure from anything he's done. It's not horror. It's like interpersonal. It's people who are two people specifically who are like psychically connected. Like they can see through each other's eyes and like that sort of thing. But the woman is in a really unhappy marriage, and the guy is kind of going nowhere in life. So they don't really know each other, and it just happens. And it's really, the movie is like a collision of two very different lives.
I've never even heard of it until now.
Yeah, it's really good. It's definitely worth a watch.
I'll have to check it out. And I totally missed Much Ado About Nothing, and I still have not seen it.
Oh my gosh.
Which is a shame because everyone's in it. And I think, we're talking about Buffy, and we'd be remiss to say, like, Joss Whedon has his stable of actors and actresses.
Yeah.
And it's amazing to see from Buffy or from those shows where they have gone to.
Right.
Like,
I love Amy Acker anytime she crops up.
It
was such a joy actually to see her as the cellist in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Coulson's cellist. She popped up for exactly one episode, but that had been alluded to way back in the first Avengers movie. I think there's a cellist, and then all of a sudden there she was, and it was like, of course it's you, of course it is. I really love his stable of actors for the most part, and Much Ado About Nothing is basically a Whedon yearbook. It's got everybody, which is especially nice. It stars Wesley and Fred for the people who are familiar with the Buffyverse. But it's got Ricky Lindham. It's got literally everybody. It's not super long. I want to say it's abridged because I'm pretty familiar with the text. The internet is failing me. I feel like it's in the 90-minute range. It's a really accessible piece of Shakespeare.
Much Ado About Nothing?
Yeah.
It says hour and 50.
Oh, really?
So almost 2 hours.
Just a little longer than 90 minutes. But yeah, I loved it. Especially in theaters. It's shot like an art film. It's beautiful.
I'm going to have to check it out. Because, I'm looking over the cast list now. Let's see here. Tom Lenk is in it.
Yes.
And Sean Mayer is in it.
Yeah, he's the bad guy.
Fran Kranz, Clark Gregg, Nathan Fillion, Alexis Denisov, Amy Acker.
Nathan Fillion as Dogberry. Oh my God, he's so funny.
So it's got everybody and probably more because I was just looking at the main list and I'm not looking at anybody who might just show up in the background.
Yeah, and even the background people are people you love. It's just incredible. I guess he has, for fun, when he's not helming blockbusters, I guess he has reads of Shakespeare. You see the amphitheater he had built at his home. It's in the movie. I guess he stages reads there. He casts people. He says, "This is who you're playing. Here's the script." Blah blah blah. And it's just reads of Shakespeare and plays and stuff. Apparently, that is a hobby of his. Again, to be fly on that wall. What an incredible experience.
Right, like that's an incredible thing to just to be able to do.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, come over, let's read Shakespeare.
Yeah, that's such a Hollywood thing, I feel. But in this instance, it really worked. I'm glad that they made that for sure. It's very different from his other stuff.
All right, so let's wrap it up. We've had 20 years of Buffy. What do you see happening in the next 20? Like, because at a certain point, you know, fandoms do fade, and they tend to go away for a while and come back. Like, your beloved Battlestar Galactica is one of those, where Battlestar Galactica is one of those 80s or 70s TV shows that disappeared until it came back in 2003 or whatnot.
Yeah.
What's on, like, I can't imagine Buffy comics are going to go on that much longer, maybe another year or two.
Yeah.
And then we kind of get into that gray area of, you know, it's the same with Star Trek. Star Trek TV series went away, and it's still gone. They're still working on, like, that new series that was supposed to have come out last year and now early this year, but it's being pushed back again. What's on the horizon for Buffy, do you think, for, like, the next 20 years?
I think it's always going to have that pedestal where it exists now. The people who grew up with it recognize how special it is. It's right on the cusp of horror and comedy, and it's the first of its kind in a lot of ways. And so us, our generation, us, I guess, what do you want to call us, Scoobies? By extension.
Yep, okay, I'll take that.
Yeah, we're always going to know that it's there. I do think it's going to have that, as, you know, it gets older, I do think it's going to have that moment of rediscovery. It's kind of having it if you're, like, tuned into Tumblr, or my baby sister is 16, so I hear a lot of, like, what kids are watching right now.
Right.
You see a lot of young people discovering it because it is on Netflix and you can binge all 7 seasons. And I think that's going to continue to happen. I don't think it will age especially well given the clothes and, like, how painfully, like, early 2000s it is at some point. But that's part of it. Like, there are lots of camp showings that have loyal followings even now, and I think it's really going to join that as another generation kind of picks it up. It's always going to have that beginning for us that, oh, this is kind of where strong female characters were made popular, where it was, this is the beginning of when it was cool to be a geek. This is the beginning of lots of things. I think it was actually the first girl kiss on network television. I think that's right. I read that somewhere. So it was groundbreaking, and it's important to a lot of different people who hold different interests. And I don't think it could ever die because of that. Yes, it will get older. Yes, it will probably age poorly, but I think it'll be around forever.
I can only hope so. I know one of the things I'm looking forward to is when my kids get old enough to start sitting them down to be like, this is where your names came from.
Oh, that's going to be so good. That's awesome.
All right, Barbie. So for everyone who's listening, and if they've enjoyed listening to you talk about Buffy the Vampire Slayer, or if they go back to episode 9 and listen to us talk about things like Labyrinth and Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and Battlestar Galactica and Black Widow, very detailed about Black Widow and, you know, action figure marketing at that point. Where can people find you on the social media websites?
On the interwebs, I am usually at Asgard Barbie. Or you can find me under Barbie Wi, cosplay by Barbie Wi. I feel like I'm the only one when you start typing that in, so it should be pretty easy to find me.
And you did launch a new website. I think it's cosplay by BarbieWi.com, right?
It's just BarbieWi.com.
Oh, okay.
And it is being renovated at the moment. I'm super excited for that. I'm learning so much about, like, web presence. It's very cool. Yeah, I also have an upcoming YouTube channel, so.
Oh, fantastic. What are you going to be covering on that?
Kind of like cosplay and cosplay in the off season.
Okay.
Because people see cosplayers and they think, oh, this is your life, but it's not. Like, for most of us, obviously, like the very few who are lucky enough to do it full time, have very different lives. But for most of us, it's, you know, hobby level. We have jobs and lives and, you know, other things that we do. So I kind of want to be like, look, this is where I got my skills, but this is also what I do. It's going to be kind of a bit of everything.
Great. Well, is there a timetable on that, or are you just getting it?
It should be up in the next. I guess it should be up before this episode airs. Actually, I'm just editing at the moment. I'm waiting for my software to come in. So there's that. I don't have a Mac, so I had to buy some Adobe software to make my videos watchable.
Gotcha.
Windows Movie Maker only goes so far.
Absolutely. Okay, so when you get that set up, I'll definitely be posting the link to it on the Facebook page. And Barbie, I mean, I've got so much more to talk to you about, but, you know, I can only record so much.
Right. We're going to have to do this again, actually.
Again.
If you want to talk Star Trek, you know where to find me.
I do know where to find you.
Yeah.
And you're super responsive. Barbie, listen, everyone that's listening, Barbie is super responsive. She's very friendly.
Talk to me, people. Internet.
There's so much more that Barbie has to talk about. Like, if you were digging Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. pre-Ghost Rider, because we talked about it before Ghost Rider showed up.
Yes.
I mean, Barbie probably has a whole lot of things that she'd talk to you about Ghost Rider.
I love geeking out with people. That's my favorite tool on the internet, is people who are brave enough to reach out to another person and realize that, hey, we're the same type of geek. And I'm also glued to my phone. So, like, tag me on Instagram or, you know, send me an email or whatever. I will get it. I promise you.
And if you love cute dog pictures,
that's true.
You need to be on her Instagram page because she has some incredibly cute dogs.
That's where I'm about to adopt 2 more. I'm very excited with the new house. It's much bigger. It's got, like, you know, a built-in dog room under the stairs and everything.
What?
Yeah, I mean, like, those are my children. They get spoiled so, I mean, to the best of my ability. So yeah, I'm a huge advocate for dog adoption. I work with a no-kill shelter here in Chicago. That's going to be another big part of my YouTube channel. It's a big part of what I do when I'm not cosplaying.
Well, that is incredible. Hopefully you'll name one of the dogs Harry Potter, who can then live under your stairs.
Actually, I've already picked out names. This is a big deal. One of them is named after, obviously, Princess Leia. So
that is wonderful.
Yeah, I'm really excited about the new names.
Thank you again, Barbie. I mean, I can't thank you enough. And anything that you need, just let me know.
Thanks so much for having me. This has been great.
If I leave here tomorrow, would you still remember me? Well, I must be traveling on now. There's too many places I've got to see. And if I stay here with you, girl, things just couldn't be the same. 'Cause I'm as free as a bird.
Thank you for listening to Tales from the Fandom. Subscribe to us on iTunes or your podcast app of choice. Follow us on Facebook at www.facebook.com/Tales from the Fandom to see photos, links, leave feedback, and check out upcoming guests. If you'd like to be a guest, email David at talesfromthefandom@gmail.com.